learners, welcome to the session on food packaging and labeling regulations. This is a part of your MOOC on food fundamentals and chemistry. So, when you go to buy any food product, what you see was the package, the label of that product. So, we look for the what is the quantity, what is the price, what is the expiry date, what are the contents present in the product. Even if we see same kind of food products, then we also compare the products with the different brands, we look for the brand name also. So, all these informations are very important for the consumers. So, do you think that the food manufacturer can choose any type of packaging material for their food products or can put any information on the food label? Is there any guidelines, standards, rules or regulations for selecting the packaging material or putting the label on the food package? Yes, there are rules and regulations, and I am going to talk about all those food packaging and labeling regulations in this session. So, I hope that after this session, you will be able to explain importance of food packaging and labeling, become familiar with various regulations related with food packaging and labeling, discuss salient features of food packaging regulation, identify the general, specific and mandatory requirements as per food labeling regulation. So, in the previous lectures, we discussed about the food packaging, where we discussed about the importance of the food packaging, the packaging materials, methods and machineries used in the food industry. So, you know that the important functions of food package are to contain the product, protect the product from different environmental factors, then to communicate with the consumers, and lastly it also helps in marketing of the product. So, these last two functions, that is communication with the consumers and the marketing of the product, these are the important for food labeling. These can be done through the information provided in the food label. So, what is a food label? A food label is any tag, brand, mark, pictorial or other descriptive matter which is written, printed, marked, embossed or impressed on or attached to a food container. So, food labels convey information to the consumers about the product's identity, product's contents, nutritional value, how to handle, prepare and consume it safely. So, we can say that this is a direct means of communicating information to the consumers. It also acts as an effective tool to protect the consumer health in terms of food safety and nutrition. At the same time, it provides the informed choices to the consumers. So, now we will see what are the rules and regulations at national and international level which are related with the food packaging and labeling. At the international level, we have Codex Alimentarius Commission, which has a Codex Committee on food labeling, which set the standards. So, there is a Codex General Standard for labeling of pre-packaged foods. This is the key Codex standard, and it is used by various countries as guidance for harmonization. So, at international level there is Codex standards, then US they have their own US FDA standards, European Union, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, UK and the Gulf countries, all of them are having their own regulations related to food packaging and labeling, but the main features of these Codex standards are harmonized in the various countries. Some values, some requirement may be different from country to country, but the main components of the labels are almost same. So, in India also, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, that is the food regulator, they have formulated and implemented the regulations after harmonizing it with the international standards. So, we have Food Safety and Standards Packaging Regulation 2018. Earlier, we had the Food Packaging and Labeling Regulation together, which was formulated in 2011. Then these packaging and labeling component have been separated in the regulation. So, now we have Food Safety and Standards Packaging Regulation, which came in 2018. Then came the Food Safety and Standards Labeling and Display Regulation, which came in 2020. We also have another regulation which is little bit related to the labeling. So, that is the Food Safety and Standards Advertising and Claims Regulation, which came in 2018. There is another act, rules and regulations, which is called Legal Metrology Packaged Commodities Act, Packaged Commodities Rules and Regulations. These rules came in 2017. So, all these are having the requirements for the food packaging and labeling. There are few more food safety and standard regulations which has the provision for the food labeling also. So, all the requirements of these different regulations are incorporated in the food labeling and display regulation. Now, we will see the packaging regulation, the food safety and standards packaging regulation. So, this standard regulation has given a suggested list of the packaging materials which can be used for the various food groups. So, there are general requirements, then there are specific requirements. General requirement says that food is to be packed in clean and hygienic container, and the packaging material should be able to withstand the mechanical, the chemical or the thermal stresses during normal transportation. And the primary packaging material which comes in direct contact with the food, that has to be made of only food grade material. Packaging material must be as per the specification mentioned in these regulations. And the tin containers, you might have seen the tin containers which are used for the packaging of the edible oil. So, tin containers should not be reused, and the printing inks which can contaminate the food. So, the printing ink quality should conform to the Indian standards mentioned in this regulation, and the printed surface of packaging, that shall not come into direct contact with the food. And the same thing also for newspaper. You might have seen the use of newspapers for wrapping the food, especially by the street food vendors, but that is not allowed. Newspapers must not be used for wrapping food, because the ink which is used in the newspaper printing, that can also contaminate the food. All the food business operators should obtain certificate of conformity from the NABL lab against these regulations for the quality of the primary packaging material. Now, we will see what are the specific requirements of primary food packaging. So, as per these regulations, all the packaging materials, especially the primary packaging materials, the paper, paper board, the metals or plastics or glass, all have to conform the IS standards mentioned in this regulation. IS standards, I mean to say the Indian standards, Bureau of Indian Standards, that has to be followed for selecting all this packaging material. Then all these packaging materials, especially the primary packaging material, have to be food grade quality, and they should be free from any kind of defects. For example, the paper board materials, that should be free from visible specks, grease marks or cuts or pinholes. And the glass container should be free from any kind of blisters, mold marks, stones, cracks or any visible defects. Metal and metal alloys, they should be free from rusts. All the plastic materials, that should not release any substance exceeding the specific migration limit. Recycled plastic materials, including the carry bags, that should not be used for the packaging or storing or carrying or dispensing any kind of food article. As I mentioned that the plastic material should not release any chemical substance beyond exceeding its specific migration limit. So, let us see what is meant by that specific migration limit. It means it is the maximum permitted amount of a given substance released from a material into the food article. So, this regulation has given the limits for this migration of the chemicals into the food from the packaging material. If you see the table, you will see that the maximum migration limit, the specific migration limit is expressed in unit of milligram per kg of food. In case of barium, it is 1 milligram per kg, copper 5 milligram per kg, then iron it is little higher range, it is 48 milligram per kg, lithium is very less quantity allowed, that is 0.6 milligram per kg, and zinc 25 milligram per kg. So, while choosing any packaging material, we have to keep in mind that the specific migration limit for that plastic material should follow this norms. Now, I will discuss about the labeling regulations. So, we have the food safety and standards regulation for labeling and display, which came in 2020. This regulation has been harmonized with another rules and regulation, that is the legal metrology rules for packaged commodities. there are certain requirements in that rules regarding the food packaging and labeling. So, those has been considered while formulating this regulation for labeling and display. This labeling and display regulation has lot of requirements in terms of general requirements, labeling requirements, principal display requirements, mandatory declaration, display of information in food service establishments, requirements relating to the use of food additives. Now, we will discuss this one by one. If you see the general requirements in this labeling and display regulation, you will see that every pre-packaged food shall have a label with the required information, and the contents on the label shall be clear, unambiguous, prominent, indelible and easily readable, and the label shall not be separated from the container. There should be no false, misleading or deceptive label, no conflicting pictorial device written or printed or graphics shall be used. And the declaration, especially the mandatory declaration on the label, shall be either in Hindi or in English. Additionally, any other regional language can also be used for declaration on the label. In case of e-commerce, nowadays people are buying the food product even through online portals. So, there is a provision of e-commerce or any other direct selling of food. All the mandatory requirements of the label shall be provided in their website before selling the food. If you see the specific requirements in this labeling and display regulation, you see that labeling requirements which contains the name of the food, the list of ingredients used in the food, the nutritional information, then date marking, then some mandatory declaration in the food, the use of logos, etc. So, I will discuss all these one by one. Let us start with the name of the food. All the food product labels should have the name of the food, and name should indicate only the true nature of the food. It should not mislead the consumers. A common name should be used. Additionally, if the manufacturer wants to use any coined name, fanciful or brand name or trade name, that has to comply with the requirements given in the Food Safety and Standards Regulation for advertising and claims. Then there should be the list of the ingredients of the food. So, all the ingredients used in the food must be stated in a descending order of by weight or volume. Some of the ingredients are to be mentioned specifically, like sucrose is used in the product, then it should be mentioned as sugar. If any kind of vegetable oil is used, then the name of that vegetable oil should be specifically mentioned. For example, if it is mustard oil or olive oil or palm oil, so that has to be mentioned in the list. If any kind of animal fat is used in that product, then source of the animal fat, whether it is a pork fat or there is a beef fat, that has to be mentioned. If any meat is used in that product preparation, then the source of the meat like chicken, mutton, beef, etc. should be mentioned in the list of the ingredients. If added water is used for the preparation of the product and the water is not evaporated from the product during manufacture, then the added water is also to be mentioned in the list of the ingredients. Added water should not be declared on the list of the ingredients where it is a part of the brine or syrup or broth which is already mentioned in the food ingredient list. Added micronutrients are not to be included in the list of the ingredients, as these are subject to the nutritional declaration. But there is exception also. Okay? List of ingredients not required for single ingredient product like the salt or sugar or any alcoholic beverages. Here I have given one example of a food label which is showing the list of ingredients used in the instant noodles. You can see that the main ingredient is the atta, that is the wheat flour, that is 76%. That should come first in the list of the ingredients. As I mentioned that it has to be given in the descending order of the weight or the volume. So, then there is also special mention of the palm oil. When the vegetable oil is used, the source of the actual name of that oil should be mentioned. Here you can see the other additives are also mentioned as stabilizer, thickener, and the acidity regulators are also given in the list of ingredients. So, now we will see the declaration regarding the food additives. You know, there is one regulation, Food Safety and Standard Regulation for food products and the food additives. So, there is a list of the permitted food additives and their maximum limit for use and their international numbering system, that the INS number is also given in that regulations. So, whatever food additives are used and mentioned in the label of the food package, that has to be mentioned as the functional class first for the food additives. Functional classes, I mean to say that whether it is a preservative, whether it is a stabilizer or emulsifier, chelating agent or the acidity regulator. So, that has to be mentioned. Then that will be followed by the name of the additive or the INS number for that additive. So, here in the example of that label, you can see that list of ingredients contain the acidity regulators, and within bracket the INS 500, INS 450 are mentioned. So, these are the INS number for the specific additive, the acidity regulator. Then there is mention of stabilizer, thickener, etc. So, for flavors, if you are using flavors, for artificial flavor, common name should be used, and for the natural flavoring substances or nature identical substances, the class name of that natural flavoring substances should be used in the label, and it has to be mentioned in the capital letters like it contains artificial flavor. If you see the nutritional information on the label, you will see that the nutritional informations are normally given as per the nutrients present in 100 grams of that product or 100 ml of that product, or per single consumption pack, or the per served percentage contribution to the RDA. So, what are the information that should be given in that nutritional information? First come the energy value, that has to be written in kilocalorie. In the example of that food label, you can see that the product provides 230 calories, that has to be mentioned in the nutritional facts. Then there should be mention of the amounts of protein present in that, the carbohydrate, the total sugars, added sugars, total fat, saturated fat, trans fat, all are in grams, and if it contains cholesterol, that should be expressed in milligram. For the sodium also it should be expressed in milligram. Then vitamins and minerals, if these are expressed in metric units, the numerical information should be given on the list of the nutritional information. And amount of food in gram or ml per for reference besides serving measures and number of servings in package should be there. If food claims to be enriched with minerals or proteins or vitamins or amino acids or enzymes, then that information, that quantity of that nutrient is also to be mentioned on the nutritional information on the label. There are exemptions also for mandatory nutritional labeling. So, it is not required for the single ingredient unprocessed product, for water, for herbs, spice, salt or the sweeteners or the coffee, tea or the herbal infusions, fermented vinegars, flavorings, food additives, processing aids, then food enzymes, gelatin, yeast, chewing gums, alcoholic beverages and the foods for the special dietary uses. It is not mandatory to mention all the nutritional information on the food label. Then there is also compulsory requirement for the declaration of name and complete address of the brand owner. That should be there on the label, and it should be mentioned as either the manufactured by or marketed by, or the manufactured and marketed by, or packed and marketed by, or bottled by, or blended or bottled by, as the case may be. So, if the product is imported from some other country, then the name and complete address of the importer for the imported foods and the name of the country of origin of the food should also be mentioned on the food label. For labeling of imported foods, the importer has also to comply with the requirements of the another regulation, that is the Food Safety and Standard Regulation for import. And according to that, the importer needs to mention the country of origin for the imported foods on the food label. Then another important declaration is the net quantity, retail sale price and the consumer care details, and all these declarations shall be as provided in the Legal Metrology Act 2009 and the rules thereon. Okay. And the lot number, code number or batch number, these identification are also very important on the food label, because this will help to trace the history or source of the food. So, that will help in case of any case of emergency or food recall. So, the lot number, code number, batch number are also to be mentioned on the food package. In the example, you can see that the net weight is mentioned, then the retail price is also mentioned there, lot number, batch number is also given there, and there is also barcode which may contains the information about the address of the owner or any other important information. Then there should be the instruction for use of that food. If the food is to be stored in refrigerator or in frozen condition, if the food is to be reconstituted for preparation, if there is an instruction for cooking of that product, all these informations are to be given on the label of the product. In some cases where the product is normally stored at room temperature for the canned product or the aseptic packaged product, but after opening that can or aseptic packing, it needs to be stored in the refrigerator. So, these type of instructions should be given on the food label. Date marking. So, which dates are important? The date of manufacture or the packaging and the expiry or use by date, and sometimes the best before date is also mentioned on the label. So, if the shelf life of the product is less than 3 months or up to 3 months, then these dates should be mentioned in the format of DD, MM, YY format. So, days, then month and year, and the same format can also be used for the food label of the product whose shelf life is more than 3 months, and for that product the manufacturer of the packet can only mention the month and year also. So, if required, storage conditions after opening of the pack, just like I mentioned about the aseptic pack food or the canned food, that has to be also mentioned on the food label. Then for the product like the packed meals which are served in airlines or railways or mobile catering units, there should be mention of the date of manufacture and also the time of manufacture. But there is exemption also. For some products there is no need of writing the expiry date or use by date. For example, the fresh fruits and vegetables, wine, alcoholic beverages with 10% or more by alcohol, then vinegar, solid sugars, sugar boiled confectionaries and salt, chewing gum and bubble gum, there is the exception that there is no need of writing the expiry date. Now, we will see what are the important mandatory logos which are to be mentioned on the food label. So, first thing is the FSSAI, that is Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, license number and the logo. Logo is the must on the food label. Then there are another two logos which are very important for the consumers, those are the veg and non-veg logo. So, veg logo is a green circle which is inside a green color rectangle box, and there is for the non-veg product there is a brown triangle, brown color filled triangle which is inside the brown color rectangular box. So, these two logos are to be mentioned on the food label very prominently, clearly, and the color should be to the contrast to the background color, so that the consumers can easily see the logos for the veg food and non-veg food. And you know that for the products which we get from the plant source are termed as veg food, and which we get from the animal source except milk, honey and the bee wax, those should be given, all the other animal products should be given that non-veg logo. There is one regulation for the organic food, Food Safety and Standard Regulation for organic food. As per that regulation, on the food label, the logo for the Jaivik Bharat logo for the organic food, that has to be mentioned on the food label. Then there is another regulation which is for the fortification of the food. As per that regulation, the fortified food package label should contain the logo for the fortified foods, that is the +F sign with the caption that Sampurna Poshan Swasth Jeevan, that has to be there, and it should contain the statement like this food is fortified with the name of the fortifying agent, for example vitamin A, D or any iron or iodine, then there should be the logo of the fortified food. If the food is irradiated, then that should contain the logo of the irradiated food, the Radura logo should be there on the food label. Now, have a quick look at the list of the food allergens. As per the rules and regulations in our country, we have 8 different groups of food allergen, and this declaration of the food allergen is mandatory for the food label, because this is very important. Otherwise, after consuming the food, the consumers may fall sick, may even die from the food allergy. So, it is very important and mandatory component. So, on the label it should be written like the food contains, then the name of the allergen. Allergen groups are like the cereals which contains gluten, for example wheat, rye, barley, oats, etc. Can be crustacean and their products, milk and milk products, eggs and egg products, fish and fish products, peanuts, tree nuts, soybeans and their products, and if sulphite is used in concentration of more than 10 milligram per kg, then it has to be mentioned at the food allergen. But there is exemption also. If the oil is prepared for this type of peanuts or tree nuts or soybeans, that oil label need not to mention that the food allergen declaration, and the raw agricultural commodities also are exempted from this declaration. Now, we will see what are the claims on the food labels. There is one regulation, that is for the advertising and claims, food safety and standards regulation for advertising and claims. Two important claims regarding the nutrition claims or health claims. If the manufacturer is claiming that their food is having some nutritional benefits or having some health benefits, they want to claim that on that food label, then they have to follow this regulation for the advertising and claims, and all the claims must be truthful, unambiguous, not misleading, and scientifically substantiated. For nutrition claims, either there may be presence of some good nutrient or the absence of some bad component. For example, they can claim that high in protein, low in fat, no added sugar, sugar free, rich in vitamin C, fat free, reduced fat, cholesterol free, etc. So, all these nutritional claims must be supported by the specific nutritional labeling. So, nutritional information should contain this claim. Then, so another important claim is the health claim, which suggests that the consumption of that food products will have some health benefits, either in terms of improving the specific body function or reducing the disease risk. So, for example, they may claim that it supports the immunity, it promotes heart health, it improves digestion, reduces cholesterol level, helps control blood sugar, reduces the risk of the osteoporosis. As these all claims are very stricter, and it requires more substantial evidences, and it should be reflected in the nutritional information on the label. There is another type of claim about the nature of the product. The manufacturer may claim like the product is natural, fresh, pure, original, traditional, authentic, genuine or real, etc., and this could be misleading to the consumer. So, there should have a disclaimer that says this is only a brand name or a trademark, and it does not represent its true nature of the product. If you see the regulation, you will see that there is also requirement for the display of information in the food service establishment. If there is a food service establishment which is having the central license or outlets at 10 or more locations, then they have to mention the calorific value against food items on the menu cards or on the boards. For all the food service establishments, they have to mention specifically the food allergens if it is present in the food, or the veg and non-veg logo. There is exemption for the event caterers which operate less than 60 days in a year, or for the self-serve condiments or the special order items or the modified meals. This is not the requirement for the declaring that food calorific value and other things. When there is a e-commerce or online food ordering platforms, they should also display all the FSSAI license number, the nutritional information, the allergens declaration and the ingredients on their website for the consumers. I have already mentioned many exemptions for many labeling requirements. We will see few more. If the package surface area is not more than 100 square centimeter, then there are some exemptions from declarations. Some of the information, detailed informations like the details of the ingredients, the food additives, the lot number, nutritional information, license number and logo, name and address of the importer, instructions for use, these are not required on the food label itself, but these shall be given on the multi-unit packages. If the product is available in the bottle and that is a reusable bottle, then there is no need of giving the list of the ingredients on the food label. If the food is having the shelf life less than 7 days, up to 7 days or less than 7 days, then there is no need of mentioning the date of manufacture. Only expiry or use by date is sufficient on the food label. If the food is served in hotels by caterers or hospitals or religious gathering or airline, railways or any mobile unit, then they shall display with the specific declarations, the food allergen and the logo for veg or non-veg at the point of the sale or the serve of the food. Now, you can see some of the requirements which are for the specific groups of food product, like for example, the food label for the milk powders or the condensed milk, that should have a declaration that it is not to be used for infants below 6 months. So, this has to be mentioned in the capital letters on the food label. If the packaged water is claiming that this is from specific region, specific place, for example, if it says that it is a Himalayan water, then that is allowed only if the water is packed or collected at the place of designated place which is mentioned by its trade name, then only it is allowed, otherwise not. For some of the products, there are mandatory warning or declarations which are needed on the food labels. For example, for Supari, the packet should mention that the chewing of Supari is injurious to health. In case of packet of the non-calorific sweeteners, that has to mention that it contains then the name of the artificial sweetener. Then it also should write that it is not recommended for children. For monosodium glutamate, it should write on the package that this package contains monosodium glutamate and it is not recommended for infants below 12 months and the pregnant women. If the drinking water or mineral water is packaged in one-time usable plastic bottles, then it label should mention that crush the bottle after use or dispose the bottle responsibly. If it is a irradiated food, then the label should mention that it is processed by radiation and it should also contain the logo of the irradiated food and the date of irradiation and the place of the irradiation. Then if it is a cheese product coated in food grade wax, then it has to mention that coated wax to be removed before consumptions. So, all these are about the requirements, the general, the specific, the mandatory requirements for the packaging and the labeling of the food products. So, today in this session we discussed about the importance of the food packaging, importance of the food labeling and some of the regulations which are related to the food packaging and labeling in India and at the international level. Then I mentioned about the specific and general requirements of the food packaging, and you know that only the food grade primary packaging material should be used for the food packaging and they should conform to the Indian standards, that the IS standards mentioned in the food packaging regulation. Then I discussed about the food labeling and display regulations, the requirements and the requirements like the mentioning of the name of the product, the date of manufacturing, expiry date, the net quantity, the retail price, the contact details of the brand owner, company owner, then the information about the list of the ingredients, nutritional information, the mandatory logos like the FSI logo, the license number, then the veg non-veg logo, then some declaration about the food allergens, declaration about the food additives, then about the medical claims or health claims or nutrition claims. So, all these are discussed in the session very briefly. So, if you are still interested to know more about these regulations, please visit the website of Food Safety Standards Authority of India. The regulations are available there. Please go through the regulations. I wish you happy learning.